Evening, everybody. Hi, Dave. Hi, Adam. Nice to see everybody. Dan's in the house. Kieran's here. It's weird. I've got two things going. I've got my phone and I've got my laptop, and I can see on my phone who's joining, but I can't see it on the laptop. It's weird. Dave. Hello, David. How are you? George. Evening, everybody. Welcome to another Friday night in lockdown where there's NAFL on TV. So you're left subjected to watching me put some thread on a piece of metal. Hope everyone's got a drink, or at least got some tying stations set up, and hopefully you're going to be tying along tonight. Don't worry if you haven't got all the bits and pieces. Anything will do. If anything, it's all about techniques. Remember, the Roberts mantra, I suppose, is that technique trumps pattern. Patterns come and go, but if you can master the techniques, you can eventually tie every fly that sort of appears in front of you. No, Dan, these flies aren't mating. So this is my attempt to move out of my comfort zone over the last week or so. It's a Norwegian style sea trout pattern called a vaskjebånd, which is Norwegian for the raccoon fly. I found out it mimics a shrimp. This particular one, I need bigger hackle. Really, it needs to be much longer. I need these hackles really to come down to here and to here, but I didn't have any, so I was just sort of experimenting as a first tie. And I don't think it looks too bad, but it's on a size 1/0 predator hook there, so it's it's a pretty massive beast, really. Yes, Dave, on the red wine again. Okay, so we got quite a few people floating in and out. Give everybody a moment or two. So in terms of tonight, my intention, based on everybody's voting on the poll, was to put together and show you a couple of traditional wet fly patterns that can be deadly for trout, sea trout, and in bigger sizes salmon as well. And they're some of the first flies that I ever learned to tie many years ago. And I think I mentioned this before in the Cardiff Reservoirs Fly Fishing Club. And it was that sort of scenario where you were tying when I was a young lad with all the grizzled old veterans, and basically, if you didn't get it right, you'd get a sort of a stern grunt or a just an raised eyebrow, and you'd have to retie. You'd have to take it all apart, retie, and you couldn't really leave where you were sitting until you tied it perfectly, or at least to the satisfaction of the guys that were there. And that's where I learned to tie and get my technique right. And it doesn't always go right. As we know, some of these materials can be quite ethereal at times, but at least we'll get an opportunity to sort of look at certain techniques and look at how, or things that I do that I find help me out, because that's ultimately what this is about. You can jump onto YouTube and you can watch lots of people tying all these different flies, and that's absolutely great, and you learn loads, and I learn loads all the time. Ultimately, it's about practice, it's about tying, and it's about finding those little shortcuts that allow you to tie a really nice fly that's going to catch your fish ultimately at the end of the day. Okay, so we give everybody another minute or so. I will be dropping the camera down a bit because it's a smaller, if I can, I'll be using a smaller hook. Okay, so let me just adjust this. It's quite a step down from a great big massive predator hook. There we go. Okay, so first fly I'm going to tie tonight, I'm going to tie the Teal Blue and Silver, and this was one of those flies that, growing up in South Wales and fishing the South Wales rivers, you know, where we were allowed to fish wet flies and downstream and things like that, you know, you could swing it across, mimics sort of bait fish, and straight away hopefully you get some takes, but it worked quite well on the reservoirs as well, particularly the couple of reservoirs we had in the centre of Cardiff, which is amazing that we had them. So I've got in the vise here, I'm just using the old favourite Camasan B175s. So this is the Trout Heavy Traditional. It's got a nice long shank here, so we can get all of our materials on there without too much of a problem. What I'm going to do is today I'm not going to use my red thread that I've been using the last couple of weeks. I'm going straight down. I'm going to tie this mainly with Semperfli Nano Silk, and the reason for that is because I want to reduce the bulk massively as I'm tying this, because otherwise the body materials do not sit particularly well in the fly, and you end up with steps running all the way down through it. More on that in a bit. So this is the Nano Silk 12-aught. It's very strong, it's very thin. I have sort of pre-waxed it. I've got a little bit of, I don't know if you can see that, a little bit of wax there on my hand. Little tip for you: when you buy the dubbing wax, it tends to come in a disc or other shapes. I've got one here, which is a bar, and that's fine. But what I do is I just drop it into some hot water, let it soften up, make sure it hasn't melted, let it soften up, and then I pull off little pieces that are about the size of sort of 5p piece or just slightly larger. So there's a piece there, and I form it, and then I put it out and I leave it to harden again, and then I can store them in a little bottle. So I've got loads of wax discs in here, and basically I keep it on my finger because my body heat keeps it just at that the right temperature for you to be able to apply it effectively to your thread. And then you've got loads of them. You don't have to worry about them. If you just use the bar, it's pretty cold, and you're just rubbing it on, and all that's happening ultimately is your thread is just cutting grooves into it. Some of it's going on there, but not as much as you'd like. So ultimately, I'm just going to start off. Now, it's important on these that I leave space at the front. So I'm going to come in. Let me just sort my bobbin out. I'm going to come in first of all at the front, and I'm going to leave a good 2 to 3 mils away from the front, and I'm going to make a really smooth level underbody with my thread. I'm going to take it all the way down, And I'm going to use this end here just to keep pushing my thread back to keep touching turns in play. I'm going to take it up, and I'm going to take it about halfway between the barb and the point. I don't want to go too far, because otherwise my tail will start to move down into a position where I don't want it to be. So just going to remove that with my blade. Okay, so now for the tail. So the tail is going to comprise of golden pheasant. So these are golden pheasant tippets. So this is off a whole head, golden pheasant head. And I want them quite long, so I'm going to take some of the ones from the back here. So you just remove one of these, and you can get multiple flies out of this. I've already got one here that I've already taken a few off. And unlike most of the other feathers that we tend to use, where you read about them and they say pull it away from the stem at a 90-degree angle, I don't want to do that with this, because what happens then is all the points, all the tips become unaligned. And I'm just looking at this, just seeing where my alignments are. You see, I want them all to be aligned as close as I can, and I'm just going to hold it like so, and I'm going to come in. Now I want quite a lot. I'm not going to be measly here, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut about 1/2 centimetre, maybe a little bit more, of the golden pheasant. I've got a little bit too much there, gone a little bit too far. I'm just going to take that top bit out, and there we have it. And then I'm just going to fold them in half. So I've got the outer sections, there we go, the outer sections, they're giving me that bright orange look there. I've got my tippets. Now on the golden pheasant, you'll see that it's got 2 bars, and my rule of thumb is I'm going to come in and I want the second bar showing and a little bit of orange at the end, and that sort of gives me the right length. And whenever you're tying tails in, ultimately you're looking for about the length of the body and maybe a little bit longer. I quite like a longer tail on my flies. Then I'm just going to lock it in place. Don't worry if it flares up, it's going to do that. You can always tidy that up later. That's okay. Some of the barring is not perfectly aligned, but it'll do because the fish won't care ultimately. Okay, would prefer it if those were a little bit closer together. So I'm just going to take that bit and get rid of it. There we go. Nothing wrong with just a little bit of adjustment. And then I'm going to take my nano silk in touching turns all the way down. Notice I haven't cut anything at this point, because it will leave an unsightly step. I'm going to take it all the way down to about 5 mils away from the eye, so just about to that point here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I've got that bit in so far, so that's my tail in. Still not too happy with this bit here, so I'm just going to come in and just remove 1 or 2. It's the perfectionist in me, because I know that I'll look at it and go, oh, do you know what, not too happy with that. And I'm just going to take out this little section here. Okay, there we go. There we have it. So we've got a tail in, and it's all looking, hopefully it's all looking as we would expect it to look. So the next stage, we're going to stick a rib in. We're going to tie the rib in, and the rib I'm going to use is soft wire, silver. Okay, so it's as small, and this is going to give the body some protection. I'm going to use my wire scissors. Cut off quite a lot. I can always reuse it. Now what I'm going to do, like I've done before, is I'm going to come under. I'm just going to put my tying thread there. Now I'm going to pull the wire so it's running down the side and just underneath the fly. And I'm just going to bring back the wire end just to the tie-in silk, to the nano silk, and then I'm just going to gradually, without pulling, work my way up and keep it under tension to the end. And then we've got our ribbon. Tuck that out of the way just for the moment. If you've got a spring or a tie-in clip. Now for the body. So the body, I'm going to use some uni mylar, gold silver. So this is the size 12, which is absolutely perfect for this. You notice on here I've got a little stopper here, so that all my so it doesn't keep unraveling, because I have an awful problem with it unraveling. I picked these up. These are those spiral binders that you get I think I picked these up in Office Depot when it was still around. I bought, well, I tried to buy loads of them, and in the end he couldn't find a SKU for them, so he gave them to me for free, and I had hundreds of them. And literally I just cut them up, and they're perfect for fitting around your spools. So just take some of this off, tuck it in behind, and we've got this wonderful bit of mylar that's silver on one side and gold on the other, but it's the silver side we want today. And what I'm going to do here is to tie this in. I'm just going to make a little angled cut at the end. Oop, there we go. And I want the silver in, so I've got to think about if I twist and turn the mylar, which way is it going to be? So actually what I want is, when I tie it in and bring it under, I want the gold facing me, so that when I take my turns, the silver is facing the right way. Then I just trap that in, bring it down to the tail, and then gradually wind up and just cover over all of that material there. Now this is why I've chosen to tie with the nano silk today, is because hopefully you can see there's very little in way of a step here running along my body. And that's going to help when we wind round the mylar. If there's a step in there, the mylar slips and you end up with a dark spot or an area that isn't covered, and it doesn't quite look as you would want it to. Okay, so hopefully for those of you tying along, we've got to that point. I'm going to have a little mouthful of wine. Okay, so got to this point. I'm just going to take my tying thread right to the end. So here I've got my mylar. You can see the gold there. Now that's going to be going underneath, so I've got the silver on the top, and I'm going to bring it round once. I'm going to bring it down at a totally vertically, not at an angle at the moment, and then I'm going to move it at an angle. I'm going to add about 10 degrees to that. And what you'll find is, if the body shape underneath is right, they will just butt up against each other, and they will do it naturally, and they will slide into a natural position. There we go. There we go. And I'm going to take it a little bit further than I need to, just because it gives me a nice body. I'm just going to take a turn to trap down, a second locking turn, and we've got our nice silver body already in play. Now that technique applies to when you're winding anything on. It doesn't have to be silver mylar. It could be peacock herl. You know, the last thing you want is lots of steps in your body, in your underbody. So here we want a nice, if I run my finger over it, can't feel anything apart from the individual ridges of each turn there of the mylar. I'm going to come in, I'm just going to nip that off and save the rest for the next fly that we're going to use. And then I'm going to tidy at the end. I'm just going to cover all this over because that's going to help us in the next stage. There we go. So we're at this point now. Okay. So Kieran's asked, what thread did you use to tie with prior to nano silk? Oh man. All those years ago, when I was tying, I can't remember the name of the thread we were using. It was basically whatever I was given. But you know, you can use anything, to be honest. But I'm a particular fan. I do like Viva's threads. I think I've put that on here before. You know, UTC would be okay. I think it would be, you would slip, and also it spreads out a little bit too much. I want it very, very fine. The reason that I'm using the nano silk today is because it leaves a low profile and doesn't build up massive bulk running through it. Yeah, George Purcell's wax silk. Yeah, fine. I do find though that the wax and that the silk threads can be very thick. I do like tying my dry flies with Semperfli spider thread, because it well, just does everything I want it to. So now I'm going to apply my rib, and before we would have gone around this way. Okay, I do like to tie my ribs in the opposite direction to my thread, just to give that extra protection. And I'm going to make equal turns. It's worth just taking your time, equally spaced. So when we have a look here, you can see that the space here is about a needle's width, a needle's width, needle's width, and we're going to move up the body like that at a slight angle. I suppose that's got to be about 10 degrees. There we go. Take it all the way up again until I get to this point here, and then I put a locking wrap in and a second locking wrap. Now, because nano silk is very fine, I'm going to have to put some extra turns in on this, but if you notice, what I've done is I've pulled my wire down like so. I can move it back. Right, that'll work perfectly well. And if I hold my thread, I can worry off my wire. I now have, I can just see that my thread. The other good thing about nano silk is that you can split it. So for dubbing loops and things like that, it can work really well too. So there we have it. Okay, so we've got this nice looking body profile running all the way through it. And we've still got enough space here to put a hackle in and a wing. Okay. Okay. So I'm just looking at the comments as we're running through. Yeah, thinner mylar, Dan. For smaller flies, yeah, but I find thinner mylar for me, I tend to use as more as a rib. And the 12 just seems to do it. It just seems to fit perfectly with many of these flies. And Kieran, thanks. I meant thickness more than brand. I have no idea, dude, because in those days, 35 years ago, who knows what it was. I was just given loads of stuff. I probably got some stuff here that I had 30 years ago that I never finished using, but they never had labels on them at the time. You just asked for olive tying silk down at Gary Evans, and Gary Evans would go, you know, they would all be laid out, and you just pick loads of stuff up and just buy it, to be perfectly honest. But those were in the days where you could also buy things like Indian Crow and stuff like that, which I might even have some of that lying around here. Okay, so we got to this point here now. Next stage is, well, it's the teal blue, so I need some blue feathers, and some nice blue feathers here. wonderfully dyed for me by Mr. David Lloyd, if he's still watching, and with some perfect sizes in here for exactly what I want. So I've plucked off a couple here just to show you. Okay, so I've got these Kingfisher blue blue feathers. It's a lovely colour, and I'm looking for a hackle length about 1 and a bit times the length of the gape ultimately. Okay, so that's gonna sit perfectly. Now, like with all of these feathers, I'm gonna just pluck off the flue and get rid of those bits. Now, I'm going to tie this in though at the tip, not at this end of the stem. The reason for that is because this section here, the stem, which is called the rachis, it's very thick down this end in relative terms. Not as thick as a game feather, but it's still very, very thick, and it's going to build up a lot of bulk, and you're going to be able to see it. Whereas at this end, it is very thin. So it's going to get hidden in the number of turns that we put on. That in itself, though, then produces an issue because it's a lot weaker. And so tension and being aware of the pressure that you're applying to the feather is going to be really important. So I'm going to take my feather and I'm just going to prep it. So I'm just going to stroke back the ends like that. So we've got my feather. So there it is. It's still a beautiful blue colour. Okay. And at this point, I would tie it in like so. But I don't want to be messing around in a couple of minutes' time and trying to cut all this off. So I'm just going to trim it to leave myself a little stub. There you go. So I've got a little stub. And that's the bit that I'm going to tie in. So just going to position it. And I'm going to bring my tying thread. So just sort this out. Just give it a bit of a spin because it started to separate out. That's better. Take that back up. And just come in 1, 2 lock-in turns. So I've got my feather in. And I'm just going to take it up and back. And I'm left with just a tiny little bit of feather here that I can now deal with by rotating my vise and just trimming it off. Don't worry about getting all of it because you're going to cover it over at the end. So there we go. And there we have it. So we've got our hackle tied in. Okay. So next stage is to put some turns in. I don't want a lot. You can do a number of things with this, and I know James Wayne and I had a little bit of a discourse about whether or not you put a throat hackle in or a full hackle. I do like a full hackle, but you could just tie it in as a hackle and then bring it down just so you've got a throat hackle if you like. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do today. We'll have a look. So I'm going to use my hackle pliers, and I'm just going to wet my fingers. I'm just going to draw these back, these barbules back, and I'm just going to make 1. Come up. I'm going to make sure I'm drawing these back. 2. I don't want it too full, so I'm not going to put loads in. And then I'm just going to draw these back again, and I'm going to fit my 3rd turn in. Got 1 trap there. Just take my time, come back up. There we go. And then I'm going to bring my tying thread across. I'm going to wiggle it so that it makes its way through any of those hackles, those barbules. I'm going to put a second one in, like so, and that's almost where I want it. And then I just bring it back with my fingers, and then I just go over with my tying thread just build up. Pushing them back. And then I can come in with my scissors. And there we go. Alright, so we got this beautiful hackle that's going to pulse in the water. Okay. So, time for another drink. You've all gone quiet, so you're all watching intently or tying, one of the two. So at this point now, I'm just going to put a couple more in, just for peace of mind. And the benefit of the nano silk is that, well, with the nano silk, you're not building up a massive head at this end so far. Okay, so I've still got lots and lots of space to put in my wing. Now, if you want to make it a throat hackle, you just run your finger down the center and you part the two, bring them around to the side, and then tie over the top so that they're all pushed down. I'm not going to do that. I like it like this. It just does something for me there. And next we go in for our wing. Phil's concentrating more than I am. So hopefully you've got the sort of the key ideas there, and you can see that I've still got lots of space. That's key. If you crowd that eye, then you're going to be in trouble. In terms of the fact that you'll get to about here, and suddenly when you're building your head up, everything's just going to drop off. You want to get a nice taper into that. And when we're putting the wing in, that's going to put a lot of bulk in there. Okay. So, in terms of the wing, well, this is the teal, blue, and silver. So we've got the blue, we've got the silver, we need the teal. So here's the teal skin. Okay. This particular teal skin has to be 35 years old. It was given to me in the fly tying club. It was in those days where you go, I haven't got any teal, and then suddenly somebody from one end of the table would pass down the skin, and then you take what you need to give it back, and you go, oh no, it's for you. And it'd be like, oh man, that's amazing. And that's how I got lots of my first original sets of materials, through gifting and just really generous people. So I'm looking for some beautifully barred feathers. So here they are, these beautiful barred feathers at the end. Okay, now I've already plucked some off, and here they are. Here's one. Okay, so these beautiful barring that we're going to have for our wing. I do have somewhere, I do have some packets of teal that I was given. I think this is one of those packets. And again, you're looking, I just think that they tend to be pretty large in terms of feathers. Now you can, there's a number of ways in which you can put these on. You can use the roll method where you cut a section and then roll it and apply it. But I quite like the following method. So I'm going to take my teal feather and I'm just going to remove, again, the fluffy bits at the end. I don't want those. I'm hoping this is going to be right, because this piece of teal is 35 years old. And then what I'm going to do is I'm looking for the ends, the tip right here, like you might do with a partridge feather. And I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to find that and hold it with my hackle pliers. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw back like so into a V shape, draw back all the other fibres, and I'm going to let go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm just going to nip out that front section. So I've now made a V section at the top. That's hopefully going to be my wing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove some more of these bottom bits because they're too short. There we go. So starting to produce a wing shape where the two sides hopefully should marry up. This one isn't perfect there, but it'll do for what we need. Now I'm going to apply it into the fly here. And you can have it sitting very low, you can have it sitting much higher, it's completely up to you. They don't have to be totally touching each other. What I'm going to do is just come in, and then I'm just going to fold it down and around so that I end up with the two sides just folded against each other. I just let go of that then. So I'm going to come in again and do that. Bit fingers and thumbs tonight. There we go. And I've got my wing that's going to sit round about here. I want my wing to be, I don't want it to be short. I want it to take it just, and I like to just have the tips just so that just a bit longer than the first black bit of barring for the tail. I'm going to come in and I'm going to hold in a pinch and take my silk. I'm just going to pinch, wrap it, pull down, and put a second one in to hold it so I can have a look. And my wings started to sit in the right place. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that at this moment in time. Could play around with it. I'm just going to tidy up this front section here, like so. And then I'm just going to have a look and see. You can see got that V cross section just pushing out there. Got that beautiful blue, the silver. What self-respecting trout wouldn't want to eat that? That's all I can say. And then I'm going to come in with my scissors and at an angle here at the head. I'm just going to trim that off gently, and I've still got plenty of space. And what I'm going to do is just tidy up with the nano silk from the head, working my way backwards. Just tidying it all up like so. There we go. So we got this nice head that's already started to appear. So now I'm going to whip finish. 1, 2, 3, little whip finish on there. And the thing about nano silk is don't use your best scissors on nano silk because it will blunt them. I tend to use a scalpel blade, particularly for nano silk. So I'm just going to push it against the blade, and it just brings it off. Now you could leave it like that. That'd be a very traditional colour. But what I'm going to do with now is I'm going to build up a second head on it, as if I was tying it for sea trout. So I'm just going to take a little bit of varnish. I'm just going to apply it with a needle just to the head. Now the reason I'm doing this is to give that head a little bit of protection, but also when I apply the different colour thread to it, it's going to be able to bind to it as well. So I'm going to use thought you'd escaped. I'm going to use my trusty red spider silk, and I'm going to build up a red head on this. Be very traditional to have a red head for a sea trout pattern. Another trigger point. We've talked about trigger points before, and I'm just going to take my time. I'm not going to rush it. The varnish, you see it going a darker red. That's because it's soaking up the varnish, and we're putting it in. I'm going to bring it back to the rear of the fly. I'm just going to take out the tag end of thread, like so. Put another turn in just to hide that bit that I've just cut, and get rid of that. And I'm going to come in with my whip finish again, and whip finish, and there we have it. And then the last stage is I'm going to put in another dab of varnish. Take your time. Don't want to get it in the eye. Going to go all the way around. There we go. We have what ultimately is going to be a fly that you're gonna want to use ultimately. We used to use this a lot on the reservoirs, particularly as a point fly. It's absolutely fantastic. So let's have a look. One last thing, I'm just going to use this extra blue feather. I'm just going to poke it in the eye, just to make sure I've not got any varnish in there. There we go. And there we go. There's the teal, blue and silver. Okay, very traditional pattern. And you can vary it up. So if you change the colour of the hackle and dub a body on there of maybe claret, you've got a whole different fly. Put a wing of mallard on there, you got a mallard and claret. Just straight away. The variation in the flies from those very early days was very, very, very limited, because we've got to remember that access to various colours and types of feathers, it was pretty limited in those days. Most of the traditional flies, particularly the wet flies, are all just the variation on a theme. Okay, so I'm just going to have a little bit of a 2-second break before we move into the next one. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Okay. Red wine does make flies look so much better. You're right, Rod. Can't seem to. Yeah, let's change that. Yeah, Dan, mallard absolutely fine. What you find with the mallard as well, though, is that mallard tends to be a bit darker, and so you get the black, but you get a muddier barring on it, and you're almost moving into the mallard and claret type situation there. You don't need to use teal. I just happen to have loads of it from that skin and various other things, but you could swap it. You could use pheasant. You could use whatever, couldn't you? Doesn't really matter. George is going to tie them on a size 16. Good luck, George. I look forward to seeing those. George, yep, Glow Bright. Yes, you could use Glow Bright. Thanks, Dave. Teal, yes. Kieran, I would suggest Cookshill. My personal advice would be, like with most of these things, if you can afford it, buy a skin and get the best quality skin you can. Because then you've got enough feathers for a lifetime, and you'll be able to pick and choose which size feathers you like. If you buy packs, you can get them graded. I know Steve at Cookshill does grade them, and you can ask for specific sizes. But sometimes if you buy them just as a pack of teal feathers from Vineyards, you're going to get a variety of sizes, and some of them you're really not going to use particularly much. So Cookshill's definitely a good place. Okay, so there's our teal, blue and silver. Don't forget that over the course of the weekend I'll be setting up the tying guides to these and the tying videos as well, and those will be going up. I hope you've managed to have an opportunity to look at those on the YouTube channel, and if you haven't, please have a look. If you like, subscribe, and direct other people to them. I'm not getting anything for promoting brands and things like that. This is not what this is about. I am literally, at this moment in time, this is literally just for the love of what we're doing and supporting you guys. So there we go. There's the teal, blue and silver. All the flies that I'm tying in these sessions, because this is week 4, are all being put to one side, and we'll be auctioning them off probably in the new year, I would have thought, for fishing for schools. Okay, so what to do with my hooks? So next fly, teal, blue and silver. Not is the Invicta, sorry, not the Teal Blue and Silver. That's the red wine talking. Again, I'm going to use my Kamasan B175s, size 10, just to so you can see the sizes in it. And the tying of the Invicta is pretty similar, just with a couple of extra stages involved in it. Okay. So we're going to start off in exactly the same way. I'm going to use my Nano Silk again. I'm going to give it a bit of a wax, just so that it all binds together, helps it lock together as well. Ultimately will stop it from fraying as well. I'm going to start off again with quite a lot of space at the front, okay, because there's a lot going on with this fly, and it is the more complicated of the two. And I always think that if you're into tying and you want to test virtually all of the techniques that you're ever going to need to use for tying flies, the Invicta, or the Silver Invicta as we're going to tie today, is definitely up there. You know, if you can tie an Invicta and you can tie an Invicta well, really good job. And I'll applaud everybody and anybody, but it's definitely one that I was taught to tie just for that very reason. So I've taken the tying silk all the way back down, stopped, bring this back round, I've stopped halfway between the point and the barb, and I'm just going to bring it back a little bit just to get it away from the tip of the hook. And I'm going to go back to my golden pheasant. Now this time, instead of the tippets, I'm going to use the toppings. So these beautiful golden bits here. You can buy these individually in packets. Again, this is a head, not expensive as things go. As these things go, it's worth getting hold of one, because you get a variety of sizes of toppings for various things. You can use them as cheeks, but you can also use them as tails. And the toppings here, you get a variety of sizes. So I'm going to go for one of these long ones at the back, just for this particular pattern. And you could probably end up tying, if I can get it off the cape, probably end up tying at least 2 flies from this. I've got 2 feathers there. Let's get rid of one of those. Probably get two or 3 flies out of this. You know, so use the whole length of it when you're tying. And what I'm looking for is that natural curve, and I want that natural curve to go up. So that's the way I'm going to tie it in, and I want it on top of the shank of the hook. But again, what I definitely want is to keep the profile of the fly as slim as possible. Okay, so we're going to tie this in, just bring it to the top. I'm going to tie it in very long to start with. I'm going to put 2, 3 lock-in turns in, and then I'm just going to draw it back. Just checking, see, that's way too long. I want about the same as before with the Teal Blue and Silver, the length of the body plus a little bit. And you can have it as long or as short as you like, really, in relative terms. A little bit long, still a little bit long. Just bringing it in. Remember, it's going to go to there. Just a little bit more. That's about right. And then I'm going to continue to take my thread all the way back to my start point, to there. Just make sure it's positioned on the top of my hook. There we go. So I've got my curve pointing up. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and I need to remove this bit, but I'm not going to cut right in here because that will make a step. I'm going to lay it down, and I am literally going to put a 45-degree little cut. So I'm resting my scissors on the eye, using that as a guide. Cut. There we go. And as I very slowly and carefully move my thread down, I'm just trapping all of those pheasant toppings down, and I'm not building up too much bulk. So there we go. So run my finger along it. I can't really feel any steps, which is great. So when I put my body in, it's going to be perfect. So somewhere around here, I had my piece of wire from the Teal Blue and Silver, but in typical fashion, can't actually see what I've done with it. So I'm just going to take another piece, not so long this time, so I don't want to waste it. Exactly the same. Okay, so it's the soft wire, small silver. Okay, and I'm going to tie it in exactly the same way as before. So I'm going to bring it under, lift, round to the side and just underneath. Holding my thread tight, I'm just going to pull it through, make sure it doesn't go too far. And then I'm going to tie it in very carefully and slowly, not too quickly. So I take it all the way back. Like so. So I've got my rib in. And now we're going to put the body material in, which again is the size 12 silver mylar, gold silver. Exactly the same as before. I want the silver on the outside, so I'm just going to cut a little jagged end, and I want the gold on the outside, so the silver's on the inside as I tie it in. I'm going to bring it down at an angle and bring my thread back and then tidy up. I'm going to take it all the way back to almost to the eye, and then we've got our body materials and our ribbing all set to go. Okay, right, so at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind on again my silver mylar, so straight down to start, and then at a 10-degree angle. And again, if we formed our underbody effectively, they should just slide effortlessly over each other and just butt up against each other so that it looks like they're just interlaced together. Let's take it up to the end, come up, lock in place, 1, 2, trim off, and just tidy up this end here. There we go. Right, okay, so we've got to this point here. Again, we've got this nice even body with our golden pheasant topping tail sticking out here. We've got a rib here. Now on this fly we're going to put on a hackle at this point, because what we're going to do is we're going to move it and tie it in down the body in what's called the palmered fashion, for those of you that do tie regularly. Back in the sort of the 1900s, late 1800s, even before that, the vast majority of wet flies that were fished with were part of the palmers. So you end up with the soldier palmer and things like that. So palmered hackles featured prominently in the flies at the time, and the Invicta was designed by a young gentleman by the name of James Ogden. He was a bit of a fly fishing upstart at the time, and he wrote some really interesting stuff, but nobody actually took him seriously. And it's only now that actually most of the things he talks about and did talk about were actually made sense. So so I'm looking for, I've got another Indian hen cape here. Not quite sure where I got this one. This isn't one that David's done for me. This one is another one, and it's sort of a, it's more of a, it's got, well, the fibres are actually more cock-like than they are hen-like, so it's a henny cock, I suppose. So I'm looking, I don't want them too long, so I'm just going to size them up. Yeah, okay, that's a little bit too long, so I'm going to come down to this end here of my cape, and it's worth taking the time. So you want something that's not too, hasn't got really long barbules on it, but also is long enough so you can wind it down the actual fly itself without losing anything. So I'm just going to judge that. That looks about, yeah, that looks about right. And I'm going to come in and just take off the fluffy bits at the end. Now this time I'm not going to tie this in at the tip, because actually I want the natural taper to taper backwards, so that it's thinner and shorter this end than it is at this end here. So I'm going to come in and tie this in place, a couple of lock-in turns. Okay, make sure it's where I want it to be. It's about right. So I'm just going to lock it completely into place, because the last thing I want is to pull it and it all just comes out, which will probably happen now. And then I'm just going to nip that section off. There we have it. So what we're going to now do is I'm going to palmer that. I'm going to palmer that all the way down the hook shank. So I'm going to take the end, take my hackle pliers, and attach. So I'm just going to pull my feather back just to bend the shank of the spine of the feather, and then I'm just going to, it's not wanting to play ball at the moment, I'm going to put a turn, oh, wrong way, not going to do it. Take your time. Worth definitely taking your time. So here we go. So we've got the first one in. Not liking that at this moment in time. Just going to pull these back. Like so. That's better. So first one in. Like so. And then equally spaced, I'm going to palmer the feather, making sure I'm not trapping any of the bits down. You're going to get some that are going to get trapped. I'm going to palmer it. There we go. So that's, what's that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. 5th turn at the end. And then I bring the tip up, and now I'm going to take my wire and I'm just going to trap that tip in place and pull it down, give it a wiggle so it doesn't trap down any of the fibres, or at least the minimum number. And then I'm going to wind my rib up, trapping down the hackle. Notice how I'm wiggling it. If I wiggle it, it's going to work its way through those fibres and trap down bare minimum. And now it's giving it a whole load of protection for when those fish hit it. And bring it right up to the front, like so. And I'm going to put 1, 2 lock-in turns in just to hold it. Have a look at my fibres there, just pull them back. Pretty happy with that at the moment for a Friday night. And I'm just going to trap these down. And I'm going to hold my thread and just worry away the end of the wire without cutting, because otherwise you end up with a bulky bit of wire sticking out of the end. And then I'm just going to do a bit of a tidy up at the front, just give myself a nice starting point for when the wing goes in. There we go. So it's starting to take shape. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to find this end piece here. And I'm just going to open my scissors with a tiny little V. I'm going to find that tip, I'm going to slide it down, and I'm just going to push my scissors against it. I'm not going to cut, I'm just going to push. And then I won't cut off any of the extra sections. So now I've started to get this sort of palmed bushy effect for the fly. There we go. So we can see it's looking a bit of a mess at the moment, but next comes the wings. Okay, so I'm going to tie the wings in. So for my wings, I'm going to use hen and pheasant. Okay, so little tip: if you're buying wings, buy them as pairs, because generally, hoping, fingers crossed, those birds, those wings have been taken from the same bird. If you're getting them from a shoot or something like that, doubly make sure that they've come from the same bird. When I do that, and we've got those coming, they'll be tagged together to make sure that they don't all come as different ones. And when we're looking at the feathers, it's quite hard to see here. I'll do a little video on this. But when we're looking at finding the feathers that we want to use, it's always better to. I always find, this is what I do. Let's do it this way. So I'm going to look at the back of the wing, and we've got all these primary feathers here, and you've got the secondary feathers here. I'm looking for the primary feathers, and I want something that's got some nice colouring on it, some nice barring. I don't know if you can see that, some nice colouring and some nice barring. And I'm going to count back the number of feathers, and then I'm going to take exactly the same one from the other side, because then we're going to pair them, so you'll have the left and your right feathers. Now, just so happens, in the best traditions of Blue Peter, that I've already done this. Okay, so there they are. You might have seen these on in the group last week. So there they are. So I've got the right and the left, and they're beautifully barred. Now I've got to decide on the bits that I need from these. So this is the little trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the hooks that we're tying on. There we are. Because my guide, it was always drummed into me, was when we're looking at these guys like this. I'm literally looking for the wings to be the sort of the width of the gape of the hook that I'm using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, and I'm going to use my hook. I'm going to use that as my gauge. So that is going to be the width of my wing. Ooh, don't know if you can see that. Did that behind the fly then. That's going to be the width of my wing. Okay, so it's the width of the gape. And what I want to do is I want to keep these tips so that they maintain that beautiful curve there. So I'm just going to come in, and with my scissors, I'm just going to remove those. So there they are. I'm just going to put them to one side. Try not to sneeze at this point, because you'll get very upset with yourself. And then I'm going to come in with the opposite feather, and I'm looking for the same width, and I'm going to run it down my feather, pull it out, take my scissors. Now the good thing with hen pheasant is that all of those pieces all tend to stay together. Just going to give that a little snip. And ultimately what you get, ooh, messing that up, tell it's Friday night, stage fright, that's better. You can see, I don't know if you can see there, I've got my my paired wings. Okay, now you can then just pair them up together in your fingers. You can also bring them in across the top like this and tie them in like that. I do tend to like to pair them up myself in my fingers. There we go, without folding. So get the tips together. There we go. I've got my tips together. Not 100% happy with that, so I'll just take that little bit off that was doing my heading. And you can see I've got that nice tapered wing shape, which is going to go in around about here. Again, length of the body plus a little bit. I'm just going to bring these top bits down, and I'm going to hold it in. I'm going to, before I do that, I'm just going to bring my tie-in thread back. So I've left it in a resting position. Just going to bring my wing in, hold it, pinch, wrap, very gently just bring it down. Don't want to compress it too much because it'll just move it to the side. I'm going to put a lock in, turn in, and have a quick little look at my wing. It'll do. It's not perfect today, but it'll definitely work. And then I'm just going to bring my thread back and just build up that head again. And as we can see from here, we've got all this here. So I'm just going to come in, nip off the waist ends like so, and then work my way back down the head with the nano silk, trapping down all of those fibers. Just giving myself a nice even base to work with. There we go. And we're almost completed with this fly. Need my whip finish. So whip finish tool. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Come in with my blade, push it against the nano silk, so position in my wing. It's not a perfect wing today, but it'll do. It'll do. And I'm going to do exactly the same as I did with the teal, blue and silver. So I'm going to put a little bit of varnish on the head just to protect the nano silk. There we go. Just because I like putting a hotspot head on, I'm going to come in and do exactly the same with my Invicta. Now, this is the Silver Invicta. The traditional would have been seal's fur, sort of a yellow seal's fur, a very sort of ambery yellow seal's fur. So it doesn't have to be a mylar dubbed body. Just going to take my time. There we go. I'm going to come in, take the tag end off, like so. And whip finish. And even though it looked like we'd left a massive amount of space at the front. It's exactly the right amount. It's what we needed to be able to finish the fly off. And you can imagine, you know, this was and still is an absolutely deadly pattern when fishing a wet fly. I suppose it ticks all the boxes, really. You know, and all those palmers were originally designed because, you know, the fish. It was noted that the fish were feeding on caterpillars and beetles and things that were dropping off the undergrowth, hence the palmered hackles. I'm going to apply this. There we go. And there we have it. We've got a nice little Invicta with an okay wing. Okay, with an okay wing, and got this beautiful tail sticking out the back as well. Hackle, give it some movement in the water. Great little fly. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Hope that there's a few techniques in there that you can take away and have a go at. Time has gone really quickly today. It was week 4, and we're already into an hour and 10 minutes. So let's have a quick look. So Ian, new to fly fishing, never seen it. Thanks, Ian. You know, I do enjoy what I do. Yeah, George has got loads of feathers. That's cool. Yeah, I've got loads and loads and loads of materials in the drawers behind me that I had 35 years ago, and I still use them, even the threads and things. So let's see. Have you ever tied your wet flies with Mirage tinsel like the Peter Ross? Yes, I have. I have a particular fondness. This is the wrong size. I have a particular fondness for tying flies with this peacock and orange Unimiler. So it's got this beautiful peacock colour on one side, and then on the other side, if you wanted to, you got this bright orange. This is very fine, but I've obviously got it in all the sizes. So a size 12 would be perfect for this. So yeah, you know, you could use whatever, to be perfectly honest. I think we used to use, when I was a kid, we used to go to Cardiff Market, which is a massive indoor market in the centre of the city. And they had the haberdashers, and we'd buy rolls of silver lurex in different sizes. I think I might even have some here somewhere. Oh yeah, there they are. So we got these gold and silver rolls of lurex, and there you go, in different sizes that come from the haberdashers stores. I don't know if you can still get it. You probably can, but you know, there's enough on here to last like 15 lifetimes. So we used to use that more than anything. Do I have OCD feathering? Yes, I do, George. Massive OCD. Obsessive compulsive feather disorder. Yeah, thanks, Dan. So Gareth, I've always wondered how come a palmer tackle is secured at the head and tied in at the tail by the rib, not tied in tip first while you tie in the rib and body. Any reason for this? Well, I don't. Yeah, I suppose. Ultimately, it's to get the taper of the feather. I think, if I'm reading the question correctly, so that ultimately, you know, you tie in the feather in, you'll have the thicker end this end, and it tapers down, or it should do, tapers right down, and the rib there is then going to secure it in, and just trap it ultimately. So I think that's the reason why. I'm not 100% sure, but it would seem logical to me. Yeah, we get lots of pheasants down here, George. I'm just reading that comment from 10 minutes ago. We get lots of pheasants down here. Often pick up a recently deceased individual. Often don't have really nice tail feathers though, which is unfortunate. So Adam, yeah, Neil, great fly, mate. Thank you very much, Neil. Thanks, Adam. Phil, yeah, tips and techniques. And David, yep, another great. Thank you, everybody. I hope you found it useful. We've tied the 2 flies for tonight, and remember that the techniques that you use on these can be taken and applied to lots and lots and lots and lots of different patterns. So so just practice them, give it a go, you know, and pairing up wings and you split wings and things like that. They are challenging, but if you don't give them a go, you'll never know. And watch the videos, see what happens, see how people are doing it. You know, all the usual suspects out there do a really good job, and hopefully we'll get some good videos up as well, and I'll show you how to do it. Unless there are lots of other questions, I'm going to call it a day for today. I hope that's been an hour and 15 minutes well spent, and that that's 2 new patterns that possibly you can add to your boxes. Give it a try. They also make really good, both of them make really good decorative flies as well. So these old traditional patterns. Don't forget to check out the step-by-steps. Don't forget to check out the videos. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel. And keep tuning in. We'll keep these going as long as you guys want to see us tying. And we'll try and mix it up a bit. I think next week we're going to look at clink hammers. And those sorts of emergery type flies, because I know that Dave Woods particularly was asking for that, but also I do like tying them. They're quite good fun. So that's it from me for today, and I hope that you all will come back and see us all next time. See you later.